Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a very big thank you to Matthew Corrigan for sending in some awesome pictures, some awe-inspiring pictures of his Imperial Guard collection. The 144th Cadian Regiment and 5th Kazakin arrayed here in glorious parade formation. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sending these pictures in, Matthew. Just really impressive collection. No other way to say it. Just a really solid, impressive, big Imperial Guard collection. I think you've even got more tanks than I do. And I have Steel Legion. Thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures that they'd like me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page or you can email them to me. And the relevant details for that will be down in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So what we're going to be looking at today, guys, is not a specific Imperial Guard thing, but rather a core rule which is a major part and has a major effect on the Ashmurtide and the Imperial Guard. And we are going to be looking at the Blast Rule. It is going to be fixing the rules, the Blast Rule. Okay, now for those of you that have been living under a rock or unfortunately haven't had time to play any 9th edition or maybe new to 40k 9th edition, what is the Blast Rule? Very simply, it is a rule that means that when you're shooting weapons with the blast keyword, under certain circumstances, you will get a minimum number of shots. So, for example, a Demarcher cannon currently has the profile of heavy D6. That means to work out how many shots you get each time you fire it, you roll a dice, and the number that appears on that dice is the number of shots you get. So if you roll one dice and you get a 6, you will get 6 shots. If you roll a 4, you'll get 4 shots. If you roll a 2, you'll get 2 shots. Okay, now the blast rule is if you're shooting at an enemy unit that has 1 to 5 models, it's just a heavy D6, no modifier. If you are shooting at a unit that has 6 to 10 models, then you will get then there will be a minimum of 3 shots. Sorry, brain fart there. So, for example, if you're shooting at a squad of guardsmen with said Demarcher cannon and you fire it and you only get a 1, normally that would just be 1 shot, but because of the blast rule and because there are 6 to 10 men in that squad, then you will get you will actually get 3 shots, which is great. And then if you're shooting at a really big squad, you will get full shots. If you're shooting like a big blow like 20 orcs, then you roll that Demarcher cannon, you're going to get 6 shots. Okay, which is like cool. All right. The problem is that blast weapons have 2 key disadvantages, or there's a big 2 problems with the blast rule, I should say, which is, 1, it disproportionately affects certain factions. So overnight, thanks to the blast rule, the meta instantly shifted, and any faction that can take elite squads of 5 men or less became like top tier. Custodies, top tier. Marines, still top tier. You know, the new Death Guard were doing well, and now they're even better because they're super durable and they can take lots of elite units. And those factions, by and large, and obviously there'll always be exceptions, there'll always be lists, but we're talking in generalizations here, guys. But those factions which struggle to take smaller elite squads, Guard, Tyranids, and Orcs, outside of a few, Rambo underdog lists, instantly started to plummet to the bottom of the faction rankings. And this was in part to many things in 9th edition, but one factor that definitely, keeps them, kicks them whilst they're down is the blast rule, because there's no way for these factions to avoid it. So the problem I have with that rule is that fundamentally it impacts different factions to a different amount. Some factions can't, adapt around it, and therefore it's unbalanced. It's an unbalanced rule. Straight up. Second problem I have with the blast rule is that, again, you still have it is unfair on certain factions because you still have to roll to hit. So a lot of the blast weapons are random shots. They're like heavy D6. Now, we all know the problem with like the basic Lehman Rust is that it only hits on a 4+. And the moment that someone is in a bit of cover or your Rust starts getting degraded, the moment that happens, your basically Rust becomes very useless very quickly. And that is why no matter what Games Workshop do, they can't seem to fix the difference between Leman Russes and tank commanders, because everyone will always continue to take tank commanders because ballistic skill 3+ is just that much better. It's that much better. There was a time when a basic Leman Russ was 130 points with a gun and a heavy bolter, and even then people still weren't taking them. So what you've got to say, and you have units like Basilisks, which are so impressive, but because they have to roll to hit, even with a couple of cool rules that help them to try and get maximum number of shots, the Basilisk by and large still is statistically only going to kill 1 Marine a turn. It's only going to do an average of like 2 damage a turn, and if the enemy, like Death Guard, has a reduced damage by 1, then your big massive earth shaker cannon will kill half a Plague Marine or do 1 wound to a Dreadnought. This is the thing that is designed to level cities, people. It should be able to do that. So again, because the blast weapons don't automatically hit, then you have factions which have units, and that you have internal balance, which is a problem, and it's just not good. So what I propose, guys, I propose a total overhaul of the blast rule, and it will affect all factions equally. Okay, it'll be fair. Some factions will actually be able to use blast weapons a bit better, because you still have to take into account tactical skill. I mean, one of the things you could say with a flamer is that it's the same in the hands of a Space Marine or a Guardsman, but realistically, a flamer weapon would be in the hands of a Space Marine. He's got a lot more experience. He should be able to use it slightly better, but not game-breakingly so. So I have a way of changing the blast rule so that it allows your armies with poor ballistic skill to help mitigate that problem. Okay, like Guard, we have all these big guns, we can never ever hit with them, but those armies that are like Marines and Custodians and Harlequins and whatnot, those armies which are highly skilled, which are elites, they will also get a this new blast rule that I'm going to propose, but they'll be able to get it a little bit better. So that sounds fair, that sounds balanced, right? Sounds good. Let's get into it. So I propose that firstly, any blast weapon shouldn't have a random number of shots. Okay, it should have a set number of shots. All right. Now I don't know. I'm not going to go through every single blast weapon and say this one should have this many shots and this one should have this many shots. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go through and I'm going to use the battle cannon as an example. The battle cannon, a weapon that is traditionally heavy D6. Any weapon that's traditionally heavy D6. Okay. Now the first thing to say is let's make it heavy 5. Okay, it gets a flat 5. Alright? Cool. Now, when you roll to hit, you don't roll to hit. You roll to see how many hits you get. What do you mean, Mordian? This is weird. Okay, let me go through it. You choose to shoot your battle cannon at an enemy squad. If you roll, you then roll 1 dice. If you roll a 1, the shot has just gone wide. It's just gone so far wide that there's nothing. It doesn't go anywhere near the enemy. Okay. If you roll a 2 to 5, you get half the number of half the number of hits, rounding up, and they just hit. So if you've got a battle cannon which is heavy 5, and you roll a 2 to 5, you will get 3 automatic hits. So if you have a battle cannon and it's firing twice, you will get, and you roll a 2 to 5s on the dice, you will get 6 hits. And then you still have to wound, and then the AP and everything, that stays the same. I'm not looking at that. Okay? If you roll a 6, you get the maximum number of hits on that weapon's profile. Because that basically is a perfectly landed shot. So a 1 is the shot's just gone wide. It's just gone. A 2 to 5 is you have got a decent, you have hit the enemy and the shrapnel has started tearing through their ranks. It's a decent hit. Okay. And a 6 is perfect. It is exactly where it should have gone. Okay. Now that it is going to be really good for loads of ballistic skill 4+ models, and it also, you know, helps solve a lot of the question between tank commanders and Leman Russes, because now Leman Russes they're not poo. They can hit. They've got reliable damage output, and they might get the off chance where they, you know, if you get double 6, you'll get 10 shots. You'll get 10 hits. Amazing! It's really, you know, Leman Russes are actually good now. Basilisks are actually good now. Now, the problem is that you might be like, well, how is this fair with those armies that have ballistic skill? How does ballistic skill come into this? Okay, well, I would make a rule, which is if you are ballistic skill 4, 5, or 6, then you get no modifier to that dice roll to see how much of your blast hits. Okay, you don't get a modifier to it. If you are ballistic skill 3, then you can have +1 to that dice roll. But a 1 still fails. A 1 still goes off. Okay? If you are a ballistic skill 2+ model, then you get +1 to hit. But a 1 is, you know, 1 is not a fail. A 1 becomes a 2, and you get half rounding up. Because, you know, think of what models are ballistic skill 2+. You know, they're either Space Marine captains or heroes. They don't fumble grenades. You know, they've been around a long time. You know, it's Custodians. It's Gilliman. You think Gilliman's going to fumble a grenade? You think Custodian's going to fumble a grenade? He's not going to do that. Okay? Now, then you could have, okay, what about terrain? What about -1s to hit? Okay? There's 2 ways you can approach this. A -1 either is a -1 to the dice roll, although that would seem pretty crazy, because it would mean then if you're shooting with a -1 on a 1 or a 2, the shot just goes really wide. But that is one way you could do it. Or you could have it where it's -1 to hit modifier, -1 from the number of shots that of automatic hits. Okay, so if someone is -1 to hit and you're shooting them with a battle cannon, then instead of getting, you know, you get a 2 to 5, then instead of getting 3 automatic hits, you'll get 2. Okay, but it's still automatic hits. Now, I'm not, you know, 100% on how to do this rule. This is my idea of how I would do it, and I think it's pretty balanced across the factions. Some of you may say, oh, but, you know, +1 to the dice roll would mean that those, you know, people shooting with Blitzkill 3+, you can have like Thunderfire cannons, which are then going to get like maximum shots on a 5+. You know what? That could be a problem. Maybe another way of doing it. Now, I always like to throw a couple of ideas out here for, you know, the fixing the rules videos, and I like to let you guys know or tell me which you think would be the better way of doing it. You know, you could say, okay, if having people hitting on 5s and 6s is, you know, a problem. You know that you're getting like, imagine Thunderfire Cannon getting like maximum shots on a 5 or 6. That's just going to start tearing through people. Okay, fair. Well, you know what? I acknowledge that could be a problem. You know, tank commanders getting like, you know, 10 demolisher shots on a 5 or 6. That could be a problem. You know what? I acknowledge that might be a bit too powerful. So another way you could do it is you could have it where if you've got a ballistic skill 4, 5, or 6 and no modifier, but if you are ballistic skill 2 or 3, then you get to re-roll the 1. So if you roll a 1, the random number of shots, you can re-roll it. You get a chance, you know, because you're pretty well skilled. You know, you're a Marine, you're Custodes. If you're going to be shooting that big blast weapon, you've got many, many years of training under your belt. You're very unlikely to, you know, have the shot go wide, but there's always a chance, a small chance, like a 1 in 36 chance that it's just going to go off. Fair enough. There's always that chance it could happen. You could have things like, you know, some people might say, well, what about orders and like tank commanders? Like, okay, well, why would you still want to take tank commanders? They're only going to hit as well as a Leman Russ. Well, firstly, that tank commander is ballistic skill 3, so he will get to, if he rolls that 1, he will get a chance to roll again. And the order could be for gunner's kill on sight, instead of, you know, re-rolling 1s to hit, which the tank commander always does on himself. You know, the tank commander should be commanding tanks. So the reason you would take 1 is so that he can order a squadron of Leman Russes or another Leman Russ to re-roll that 1 to hit. And that becomes like, holy crap, then you want a tank commander. Because that means you could have Leman Russ tank commander, who himself, if he is rolling his number of hits, gets a 1, he'll re-roll it because he's he's a tank ace, and then you take him so that he can boost other Leman Russes, and then even in that way, if you introduced this blast rule and you introduced that new way of running tank commanders, and that way they actually do boost Leman Russes. If you did something like that, you would see people take more squadrons of Leman Russes. Because the tank commander himself would be very expensive and would have no benefit. But the tank commander and another Leman Russ that he can order, then that is a benefit. You want him to help, to help the Leman Russes. It fixes the problem, but they're not running Leman Russes on their own. It's like, or running Leman Russes on their own. It's like, okay, well, it's fine. You don't need to take tank commanders anymore. But there's always that chance you're going to get that 1. So it would become an incentive to take a tank commander to support your regular Leman Russes. But not only does it solve the disparity between having a ballistic skill 3 unit, ballistic skill 4+ unit, but it also makes it look more realistic on the battlefield. So not every tank commander you see not every Leman Russ you see is a tank commander. But it also means that tank commanders aren't so much an auto include, but when they are taken on the battlefield, they don't have such a huge look at me, shoot me first sign on them. So it solves a lot of things. And then you could introduce this armored vehicle commander thing into other factions. It could work with other factions. Look at Space Marines, Ultramarines. They could have a Talon commander or something, or Predator commander. Or Gladius or a Repulsor commander. These weapons that I suppose they don't have as many blast weapons in the Marines, but you could have like Sergeant Cronus helping out, and it would help with blast weapons. Imagine Sergeant Cronus leading a trio of Vindicators forward. He's gonna help them do well. I don't know how you could do it. I'm not sure how you. Maybe this is the thing. It's a tricky one. Maybe it's a bit of a, or maybe you just don't have any special rules in it, and it is just if you roll a 1, you just miss. No matter who you are, there's always a chance. As that custodian is about to throw that grenade, or that marine is about to throw that grenade, a lump of masonry falls on his head and he fumbles it, or a las beam just blinds him slightly and he fumbles it. It just doesn't kill his own squad mates. It just goes off somewhere. That would be fair, and everyone would be treated equally then. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, I think that would be the way I would change Blast. I think then it definitely fixes problems with having everyone a tank commander. It fixes Russes, it fixes Basilisks, gets around the crappy guard ballistic skill, which now is holding them back just too much. Just too much. It feels more like what you used to have in sort of every edition before 8th, where you had this big blast template, and sure, it would often scatter, but it always clipped 2 or 3 models, especially if it was on the big pie plates, and there was always that chance, there was that 1 in 6 chance you would get the direct hit. Yeah, I think it just feels a lot more. It feels a lot more like how blast weapons should work and how they used to work, and it just for me personally, I think it's a better way of doing it. But I am sure there is some serious flaws in my idea, and I'm sure that I've overlooked something. If it was me, what I would probably do, if you put a gun to my head and said, pick how you'd fix it, I would introduce it the way I've talked about, but just have it where it affects everyone the same. So a 1 is always a miss, a 2 to 5 is always half, rounding up, and a 6 is maximum shots. And then, having someone like Sergeant Cronus, having someone like a tank commander, they could then offer the reroll 1s thing. That would be a way of doing it. Rerolling the 1 for the round, for the round number of hits. That would probably be the best way of doing it. Keep it special. Keep it so not everyone can do it. I don't know. What do you guys think in general about it? How would you tweak it? I'm really interested to know your guys' thoughts. Thank you for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.